Am I missing anything else, Maxine? Did I miss something? I think that's all. That's what we've got. So some letters, the petition. Please call your representatives. And can I pass the petition out while we're doing the Q&A? Would anyone like? Nejla can pass this out. Raise your hand if you have not signed the petition. Great. We're going to do Q&A now. Who has a question? Yes.
Hi, Claudine Heller. I live on Sawwood Lane, which is off of John Joy by Felquay. And you didn't mention the issue about the water and the water pollution on our road. And that it's coincidental that after this dumping, all of a sudden, a year later, the Department of Health came and notified us that, you know what, we're going to give you some bottled water, and we're going to deliver you water. We don't want you drinking your water, but they don't specifically tell us why, other than the fact that this one contaminant that never existed before has all of a sudden shown up in our water when I am a quarter of a mile away from Felquay. Interesting.
We share your suspicion about the timing of this. The DEC's position has been that they have undergone a statewide inventory of closed landfills and are trying to determine the source. We can't answer that, and I know I've spoken to a number of you who have not had this identified these toxins in their water prior. So we're deeply concerned, not just about your water, but about the water, the impact this could have on Goat Hill. It's one of the reasons we're so motivated, because it's our drinking water. And we're deeply concerned about that. We don't have clear answers on that yet. We are engaged in a little bit of testing at this point. We have also been promised by the DEC that they will share their data with our town consultants and our town engineers. And we're hopeful that we can get a clear determination about what the problem is that's causing the elevated levels of those, and that's the first step into solving it. And you know, if we need those answers, quite frankly. And anyone who's here who has been contacted by the DEC and recommended bottled water, we endorse that recommendation. Please take it as a precautionary measure. The Department of Health contact. Okay. So if you have been contacted by the Department of Health and they have offered you bottled water, please take it as a precautionary measure until we get the answers that we all deserve to kind of resolve this situation. We just don't know, and that's troubling. Everybody's been very generous towards my efforts here, and I have to compliment that I've gotten unanimous support from the town board in every effort we've taken on here. Deputy Supervisor Thornton is right in front of me. Leanne, raise your hand. We believe in our zoning law. We believe that those laws were passed to protect our community, and we are willing to go through the court system to uphold our right to enforce our own laws. You know, as a community, prior town boards went through the process of adopting a law. It's not an easy thing to do, and those laws were adopted in an effort to try to make us safe and to protect our quality of life, and we think this activity threatens both of those things. It violates our safety. When you have to drink bottled water in your own home, it's hard to feel safe when you're experiencing the truck traffic that many of you are experiencing, and the elevated construction activity for extended period of times. That destroys our quality of life, and our zoning law is there to protect those things, and we are going to do everything we can to uphold our right, and we're going to partner with the DEC to make sure that they uphold the state laws as well.
Good evening, and I want to thank you people for having this get-together and information. My name is Bob Lippman. I live up in the northern end of Saugerties, so I'm away from most of this, but my heart goes out, especially to that woman who just spoke, because if she was going to sell a house, or tried to, she couldn't anymore. It's finished. But my question is, you mentioned about watching these people. In this day and age with drones and a simple thing like trail cameras, for people who don't know what a trail camera might be, hunters use them, they put them on a tree, and they take pictures all day long. So, excuse me? Oh, yeah. I suggest that possibly you consider either drones or trail cameras to watch these people. Now, this conversation keeps coming up about the court and you people appealing to the court. What level was this court at, and can't you go above this court? And is this court in favor of what's going on? I mean, you don't know if there's any prejudicial activity involved in it. My next thing was, most important in this whole investigation is, like you see on TV, follow the money. And then the zoning, isn't there such a thing as eminent domain where you can just do what you want? I mean, the government does that. Why can't we do that? You know, why can't you? I mean, it's something that your town attorney might look into. I mean, because it's not at the point anymore of trying to be politically correct or nice. Nice is over with. It's time to take the gloves off and show this gentleman and his attorney that the fight is for real, and it's no more nice guy. You know, they came to Saugerties and they figured we were nice guys. No more nice guys. And then the other thing was, what's wrong with a little organized police harassment? Now, what I mean is, no, listen, I'm very serious. When a state trooper or somebody, if you've had the misfortune of being pulled over, they can find things wrong with your car. So if they can find something wrong with an automobile, you mean to tell me one of those garbage hauling trucks have nothing wrong with them? Like tires that are worn down? Something just to harass the crap out of them. Let them know that this is not a friendly environment.
So,
you know, thank you very much.
Okay. You went through a number of things. I share your sentiment 100%, Bob, but one of the unfortunate experiences I had as a town board member many years ago is that the town did not follow the law. That cost us $500,000 as residents. And we are going to do this. We're going to do it correctly. The gloves came off in December when we put the stop work order on this activity. You know, up until that point, we're like, let us see your documentation that you're saying that this is bud material. Let us see your documentation where you have been in compliance with the DEC. And when those documents were not available to us, we said, okay, then you no longer have permission to do this. And we have been restrained by the court in upholding that activity. Harassing the trucks and things like that are exactly the activities that the court restrained us from doing. And we don't want to take any activity that will jeopardize us getting a good outcome. If we do that and we jeopardize a good outcome, we are only putting ourselves at jeopardy longer. I share your frustration with the amount of time this has taken. This is a big undertaking for the town government to do this, and we have put a lot of resources behind our effort. We have put a lot of time behind our effort, and we have too much at stake to mess around and do it the wrong way. Emily's here. Thank you. I would like Emily to weigh in on some of this because she's an attorney as well, and she would speak to it. But I share your sentiment and your frustration. As far as drone photos, we have an abundance of evidence that's clear in my view that this material has not been processed in any degree. We can see drone footage of the Goat Hill site where there are slabs of concrete as big as this table. That's clearly not suitable as an aggregate material by any measure. And it's mixed in with all kinds of other things that are not suitable as an aggregate or something that could be reused in asphalt by any of those bud standards. This is just material that was brought here in a rough state that came from a demolition project, dumped, reloaded into a truck, and dumped again for future generations, which is unacceptable. The sites are not prepared. They filled in around the treetops. There's no way that property will be suitable for construction for hundreds of years. You know, that wood is going to decay in the middle of that, and it's not, that's not a fill activity that's suitable for any level of construction. This is a money grab. And that we're being treated this way is very unfair to all of us. My concern is that I don't want to do anything that's going to put the town in jeopardy. He's demonstrated a willingness to use the court in a way that's positive for an outcome they would like to have. And I don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize or slow down our opportunity to get a timely decision. And you know, we felt back in December we were well within our rights to stop this activity in its tracks. And I still believe that strongly. I'm frustrated having to say that in May, that we haven't been able to do that yet. You know, when I go to the doctor, I take the advice that I'm giving, and I have confidence in the attorneys that's representing us and Emily's advice. And the best advice we've been given is to do this properly. And I feel that we are, and we're trying to do that in the best way we can. But I share your sentiment. I would love to stand out there and stop a truck. I couldn't do a DOT officer's job, but I've seen trucks that I could find things wrong with. And everyone in this room has seen a truck go by their house without a tarp, that's speeding, that's in the wrong lane, that's tracking mud all across the road. And, you know, to sit there and have to watch that is a very unfortunate and helpless feeling. I said a lot, but I'm certain you can add.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Just to add a couple of things. It's in the New York State Supreme Court, which is the state court in Ulster County. Courts move frustratingly slow. It's just the nature of it. If you don't like a decision out of a court, you can appeal that decision to the appellate division, but you're looking at a year to wait for a decision out of the appellate division. So it's really, there's no quick way. You just kind of have to push through it. Now, I do think that the lack of action from the New York State DEC is problematic in multiple ways. One of them being that it's giving some credence to the idea that this operation is lawful. So when Mr. Corollas, his lawyer, goes to the New York State Supreme Court and says, well, the town is trying to shut me down, but what I'm doing is in compliance with DEC regulations, and I'm just trying to make a living. Because DEC hasn't taken any action to enforce its regulations, that argument has credibility. So that's why we're really focused on encouraging and urging DEC that the time is now to take action to document the violations, so that that argument that this is a legitimate operation loses its credibility, which will help the town in their enforcement as well.
I have a couple of questions. I just have a couple of questions. I think that...
Please stand up so we could see you.
Hi. Just two questions. One, my name is Ron Frank. I'm a Saugerties resident. I assume that every truckload has documentation of road lading, documentation of origin, what's on it, and I'm just wondering whether we're subpoenaing that. I don't know that we'll learn anything more. Certainly testing will give us more information, but okay. And so trying to subpoena all the records of every truckload that has come through. The other thing is that this is costing our town a lot of money, and should the courts finally rule in our favor and shut down the site, then we're left with a terrible situation and a huge expense if there's even a possibility to remedy it. And in anticipation of that, are we looking into some kind of aggressive approach, like filing a UCC-1 lien on all of his assets and his accounts?
Good question.
So the broad answer to your question is yes. We are investing a significant amount of money into this legal action. We have a lot of money invested with consultants, a lot of money invested with attorneys, and the Catskill Mountainkeeper has also invested substantially in their effort to support our activities, and I can't say how grateful I am for that, because they have truly been a terrific partner. We will take further legal action. Our legal activity at this point is with getting some restitution back in mind, but for now, our primary focus is to uphold the zoning law, protect our right to enforce our own law, and stop this activity. That is the first step. The mess gets bigger every day. We want it to stop. We want to be able to have that conversation, and I suspect that there will be legal activity in an attempt to recoup some of what we have spent. And we're going to make every effort we can to do that. One of the particularly troubling things that has come out of all of this is in our zoning law, we have the opportunity to assess a fine of $1,000 per day. Because the court suspending that law more or less, it's questionable whether we're going to be able to go after that. We're going to go after our legal expenses anyway, but it would be a little bit nicer if this was done in a different way and we could say, okay, your bill for not following our rule for 6 months is X. The way that the judgment came down, that's an argument we're going to have to make, and it's not a certain outcome whether we'll be successful in arguing that. One of the questions Bob asked that I didn't address was the drone activity, and many of the folks in this room have shared data. Catskill Mountainkeeper has also shared data. And Mike's been quite a detective on our behalf. He's been able to have accurate documentation of times, of activity, of how many trucks, of drone pictures of the Goat Hill site on numerous occasions. And those are all valuable, and they've been able to strengthen our arguments as we move forward with all this. So I want to thank him for his dedication to this as well. Do you want to add to that?
Somebody asked about the crushing. There's absolutely no crusher there. There's an old screener there. Everything that comes in there, like Fred said before, goes in, a truck comes in, dumps the load out, they take that load, they put it in the truck, and they dump it to the other sites. Basically, all he's doing is taking the money and putting it in his pocket and getting rid of it as fast as he can so he can get more material in on his lot to do it. There's absolutely no crushing. There's no processing. There's no processing, none whatsoever.
Pointed out, if someone pursues this as quote business legitimately, are they required to monitor the nature of the material they take in, so that they would have records and that you could cite those records, say, we want to see what records you have to show us what you have taken
Yes.
in under your...
So under the, you're probably better to answer this, but I'll try. Under the registration that the DEC has lended to this process, to this activity, he has an obligation to go to seek annual approval from the town. Obviously, that has not happened, and we are in fact telling him we don't want this activity to continue. And he has a recording obligation for the prior year to submit that to the DEC. We've requested that. We've gotten incomplete for years past, nothing current. And as we started out discussing, the level of activity has only increased, and I think Mike would agree, has increased exponentially since we've taken legal action and they've been awarded by the court this restraining opportunity to operate between 7 and 3. I think by any measure, he has kind of used that as an opportunity to sprint and handle as much material as he can. But I think you're probably better.
Yeah, just to add to that, yeah, the DEC regulations require keeping track of every load that comes in and every load that goes out, and the DEC should be monitoring those records when they do their inspections. So that's what we're trying to figure out, is whether they're actually doing that monitoring and enforcement, and we need to encourage them to do so. But then the town has separate regulations where the town requires an annual permit, and for the town to issue a permit for a waste facility, it would need to have insurance, it would need to have records for how it was going to manage its environmental risks and operate its business, and none of those permits have been applied for. So that's the way the town would regulate it, but it's not happening. And that's one of the things the town is trying to enforce, if the state will let them.
Hi, Amy Fraden. I live in Woodstock. I actually live right uphill from the Goat Hill site. And 2 questions. One is I'm trying not to pop thinking about the courts doing what they're doing, and I wonder if you have any, anything you can tell us about the court and why it might have ruled in favor of an individual who may very well be doing something very dangerous and illegal in favor of its entire community. And the other thing is what can be done going forward when giving a permit to a business owner to ensure that this doesn't happen again? I don't understand how it was, how it was allowed to happen in the first place. And that's not saying, mistakes happen, people don't know everything, but we certainly can't allow this to happen again. So I'd like both of those questions addressed.
Okay, so I'll start with the second half of your question, and then I'm going to ask Emily to jump in again because she's a little bit better versed at it. But the property that Mr. Curlis is operating from was, when zoning came in place originally in 1989, that property was operated as an excavation and trucking business. And when he bought that property, the zoning recognition of a pre-existing business was extended for those purposes. We have argued, and the ZBA has now agreed, that he is not running an excavation and trucking business out of that site. He is morphed that into a solid waste transfer thing. So there is no town blessing of this activity. He has not sought a permit to do this for the town. He's more or less just doing it. And the problem we have faced, the challenge has been that so far the court has given him time to continue that activity, and you're asking why, and we don't know yet. I don't even want to go there. The court's position is that, we are basically, his argument is we are taking away his livelihood, and that may be true, but this is an unlawful business in our view. This business does not belong in our community, and the dump sites are a whole nother violation. Even if this was happening in a neighboring town lawfully, the dumping that's happening on Goat Hill and Qualified is not welcome either. We don't know why the court is being so abundantly cautious, but that is what has happened so far, and that's the framework we're trying to operate within. I don't know.
We have no reason to think that. I mean, it really is just a slow process in the courts, and I wish I had a better explanation than that. They just try to be very careful and hear out both sides of the story. And this has been sort of a evolving process because there was this decision to wait until the ZBA decision, which we thought, okay, now that the ZBA has ruled, then the court will say, all right, the due process has been upheld, and now the town should be able to enforce. But for whatever reason, the judge decided to just give it a little bit more time for more arguments to be made. So we're really hopeful that that ends soon and the judge makes a decision.
Excuse me, who's the judge?
It's Judge Mott in the Ulster County Supreme Court.
No chance of a cover-up in this. DEC, right? No chance of that.
Greg Cornell, I'm with the Dump Here Never group. I wasn't dressed well enough to sit at the table today, but I often think, I like a fight. I really do. I like to fight against injustice. I like to fight for justice. And the thought has entered my head that the obstacles that we are facing as we trek our way through the justice system, that there is corruption involved in this. Is there any evidence of that? No, there isn't. So we're going to fight, because I like a fight, and I know a lot of you do too, for a good cause. We're going to fight legally, because what our actions do reflect on us as a group, all of you here tonight, and us as a community. We don't want to act like Joe Carolus does. So we're going to keep pushing up the chain legally, and if there is corruption, it's going to be exposed, but it's going to take time, and so it's going to take patience. So as we fight, we have to keep in mind that we have to be patient so that we do the right thing in the right way.
I have a question. Actually, I had called the DEC. Yeah, my name is Susan Weeks. I live on Stoll Road, and I'm right above the Goat Hill Road site. And I had called the DEC, the New Paltz office, and spoken to a number of people there in the beginning of this year. Now, I was told by them that they consider any C&D material, or any material that comes from New York City, contaminated. And bringing any material from New York City, which is considered contaminated, into our area is completely illegal. Plus, they told me that he needs a some kind of permit or registration, and that because he had such a long history of violations, that they were not going to renew that. And that's what they told me. I asked about mitigation, okay? I said, this is going to cost a hell of a lot of money to mitigate, because that pile has to be removed. It's defacing the cliffs of Overlook and possibly polluting. And I said, is that part of what you would do if you ruled this material from New York City? And they said yes, but it would take a long time. So I just wanted to make sure that mitigation was part of the language that you guys are using, right, when you talk, legal talk. And the other thing is that I really loved John Greco at the meeting, where he was really strong and really tough. But in situations like this, you need an environmental lawyer. And I wondered if you had engaged somebody like George Rodenhausen, who's worked for the town before, is one of the best in the area. And I wondered if the town had engaged an environmental lawyer, because you really need one in order to navigate through something like this and get mitigation and get all of that. But she's working for Riverkeeper or Mountain Keeper.
So our pursuit in this effort is we feel the strongest case that we can pursue with the resources that are available to the town is to earn our right to enforce our own laws. And we feel that case is powerful and strong, and that will give us the quickest remedy to stopping this activity. And that's, John, we have confidence is doing that well on our behalf, and that's the course we're pursuing. The next component is going to be exactly what you're describing. There's going to need to be some true testing of both sites, of all three sites. Is there an impact on groundwater? If there is an impact on groundwater, that needs to be mapped. We need to understand the scope of what happened. We need to understand what the impact is and how we can mitigate that so that drinking water is safe. And
I'm talking about removing the pile.
that may be the solution. And
Why did the DEC tell me that? I mean, what's going on with the DEC?
It's a great question. Why did I just grab the microphone? Now I have to answer it. One of the things that's been going on and really ongoing is this enforcement discretion policy that is evolving. The latest one was just issued January 25th, 2019. And because of the litigation that DEC is facing at the state level, they're backing off on some of their enforcement, and it's frustrating. One of the things they're backing off on is that facilities that were able to operate with just a registration, which is something you just send in and there's no review of it, many of those facilities will now have to get permits. But this enforcement discretion policy put off the date. That was supposed to phase in this May, but they put that off to a later date. So some of this is actually changing as we speak. And that's part of what we're caught up in that may affect why we're getting mixed messages from DEC, unfortunately. But that's why I think it's really important that we all use our voices to let DEC know that Saugerties wants to see action.
Hi, my name is Jim Starlin. I live on John Joy Road, almost across the way from Felq, or whatever the name of the road is. My question is there any option at this point or in the near future where something like a homeowners organization or a private individual could take some civil suit against the Crowlesses to get things moving?
Yeah, and that's definitely something that's been discussed. I don't want to say too much, but yeah, that's certainly an option.
If you're interested in a private civil action, speak with Emily after the meeting.
Hi, I'm Shelley Lipton. I live in Saugerties. I noticed that you put on this letter the owners. We name our names. Why aren't the owners' names listed? Sometimes it's a shameful thing to have a name listed. That in itself, people cringe. Maybe they might make changes themselves. Why aren't their names on there?
I'm not sure which letter.
Are you referring to the letter?
To DEC.
Owners of these
this letter, yes. So this is also going to be in tandem with the letter that we're referencing, the letter we've already sent. Mhm.
It's a good point.
It's a good point. We could change that. Yeah, we can add it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Regina Ippolito. Since 1947, my father-in-law, Leo Ippolito Sr., owned a sanitation company in New Jersey. My husband and I had the privilege of running it. I had the privilege of being on the A901 licensure to be able to haul sanitation in New Jersey. So, albeit this is New York, it's not a far cry from New Jersey as far as regulations and whatnot. I know I had to go through an FBI check before I was approved to be on an A901 licensure in New Jersey. I know that there are different types of waste. And when you talk about solid waste as opposed to C&D waste, as opposed to tree stumps, there's all different types of waste. So I think we need to be clear, and from what I've witnessed, and I live on Glasgow in 212, I'm right up the block. So from what I've seen, it looks like dirt, it looks like C&D, concrete, block, stone, those kind of items. I don't think I've ever seen a packer or a garbage truck, so to speak, pull up and dump a load there. And that would be putrescible waste, which is solid waste. And that's like garbage from your household or a restaurant, something to that effect. There's a couple of things as I'm sitting here thinking. Okay, so one way to track these trucks. What about their easy passes? I'm sure many of them carry an easy pass. We can find out where they're coming from. I don't believe everybody's bill of lading, where it came from and what was put in that truck. Don't believe everything you read, because it may not be true. Insurance bonds. I know that I had to carry pollution insurance, and we paid $50,000 just for that annually. So are they carrying pollution insurance? And if so, what company are they carrying it with? Have they had to post any kind of bond? And by that, I mean, all right, so being in New Jersey, we call it brownfields. Go to Newark Airport. Has anybody smelled the neighborhood? Well, those are like industrial waste dump sites. They're now considered like toxic, and they're brownfields. So the mitigation, which you mentioned, the cleanup of those, that's a big expense. It's like buku bucks. We're like multi-millions to do that. So is there any bond that could be posted to the town of Saugerties in lieu of testing of these sites should a mitigation need to be necessary? Many of the corporations that were in New Jersey, let's say Leaderly Labs or some of the larger industrial corporations that created that pollution, are still in business today. Inasmuch, the state of New Jersey did seek restitution from those corporations on some of the site mitigations. So those are big Fortune 500 companies. Here we're talking about a family-owned and operated business, the Corollas. I think, my personal opinion is, if this comes to a really bad head for them, they're going to cut bait and run. They're going to file a bankruptcy, and everybody in this town, this community, we're going to get stuck with it, period, at the end of the day. So, aside from that, there's something called a bike-ron, and I don't know if anybody knows what they are. My husband had an experience with one. Okay, so bike-rons are a set of lights that are sensors, and they're required at transfer stations to determine whether or not it's a hot load. And that expression refers to something that's radioactive. So whether it be medical waste that could carry somebody's IV solution that was run through the radio-opaque dyes, or in my husband's case, one of the drivers of another truck went and had a scan done during the day. He couldn't drive his truck through because he was setting off the bike runs. It was in him, not in the load. So my husband drove the truck through for him. But the point I'm trying to make on this one in particular, New Jersey, Long Island, all of those areas have a high level of radon. Radon is going to set off the bike runs because it's radioactive. So I also know here in the Hudson Valley we have radon, and it's a naturally found substance. So when you talk about fill, quote unquote, is that virgin soil, something from an industrial dump, or is it, well, basically where's it coming from? But there again, I'll allude back to my previous statement.